The first set of topics that we're going to discuss are, without a doubt, some of the most valuable topics that we're going to be discussing. So we're certainly going off to a flying start here. The first set of topics that we're going to be talking about are a set of helpers built into the array object in JavaScript, specifically the helpers ForEach, filter, find, every, sum, and reduce. Now in the past, these helpers have been implemented by utility libraries like Lodash and underscore, so you may have already heard of these helper methods like ForEach and filter. But because of their popularity, they were initially drafted into ES 5.1, which was an earlier version of JavaScript, and now they're codified into ES 6. So this is a list of all the different helper methods that we're going to be covering. So just to be clear, these helper methods have been around for a while, so they might look familiar, but with ES6 becoming more common, the web development community is starting to see a lot more native use of each of these helpers. So you might have used them in the past as a part of Lodash or underscore. You might have even used them as a part of the array prototype previously, but now with ES6, they're starting to gain a lot more traction in the development community. So let's talk about some of these different helper methods in here. Each of these helper methods work in nearly the same fashion. So we're going to start off by talking about ForEach in the next section, and then we're going to spend a lot of time talking about ForEach, But because each of these helper methods work in much the same way, after we spend a lot of time on ForEach, we're going to spend a little bit less time on map and a little bit less time on filter and so on until we finally get down to reduce, and we'll go over reduce pretty darn quickly. Okay, so a lot of these really work in the same fashion. One quick aside, in the progression of my own career as a web developer, I've found that bar none, one of the biggest leaps of kind of programming ability that I undertook myself was when I really mastered each of these different helper methods here. By understanding what each of them does, you're going to find that you can work with collections of data more easily, and the vast majority of web applications out there end up being themed around, you guessed it, working with collections of data. So these array helper methods are something that if you start to get kind of in the habit of using on a day-to-day basis, it's really going to give you a big kick in the pants, so to speak, as far as kind of developing your programming abilities. One last thing, all these array helpers are themed around avoiding writing manual for loops, so like your classic for loop. So as a student taking this course, I would be absolutely thrilled if you messaged me in like some number of weeks and you told me that you were done with writing for loops all the time and you're now using these array helpers. So just keep that in mind. The entire goal here is to stay away from using for loops. In the future, we want to use array helper methods as much as possible. So we still haven't quite discussed what each of them are, so let's get started on the next section with ForEach.